Well, I am a preacher's daughter, which explains a lot. Um, and one of the things that I remember growing up was watching my dad come back from what he called the hedges and the byways, where he would deal with what he called the sick and afflicted. And I never really got to hear the true stories behind the sick and afflicted or the hedges and the byways, but it sounded magical because I knew that sinners were there, and he went to prisons and visited people, and he sat by hospital beds and watched people die. And I wanted nothing more than to hear these stories and to know what he really did. Well, when I was a little bit older, he finally felt comfortable enough to start telling us these stories. And it happened, I'll call it my sabbatical after college, when I was trying to find myself and found myself very broke and back at home. And my brother was also taking a sabbatical from college because, as it turns out, college is hard. And my best friend from high school, it was also on a sabbatical because she's a transgendered person. And being a transgendered female in Greenville, South Carolina, doesn't really afford many opportunities. So here we are, young 20-somethings on a sabbatical, and my father really started to open up to us like we were real adults, even though we were living like his children again. So he would cook us dinner, and we'd sit around the dinner table like family, and my brother and I and my best friend Victoria, who is part of our family, would sit at the dinner table, and we would just tell stories, and he would begin to really tell us what happened in the hedges and the byways. It was everything from, Aunt Mary's bursitis to somebody who was dealing with depression. And we finally began to understand why my dad would come home with this weight on him. And we saw his eyebrows, you could see it in his shoulders. And it really began to settle in about really what a hero he was. And he was more than just a Sunday preacher. And those are rare, the preachers who actually do something during the week and really spend their lives in the hedges and the byways. Well, it became harder for him because the church that he was serving became very, very financially strapped, to the point where he couldn't get a paycheck. And he decided that they were special enough that he would work without a paycheck. And so he looked for other work. Funny enough, my brother and I, who were on a sabbatical, needed work as well. And we all came home on the same day for dinner, and we had all three gotten jobs. Well, I came in, and I had gotten the worst job I've ever had in my life, and I don't recommend it to anyone in the world to ever take a job at a daycare. It is the worst place. Just don't. I lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks. I couldn't deal. So on the day that I came in and told my parents that with my college degree from the University of Alabama, I was working at a daycare, my brother came in and told us that he was a fluffer. Now, my best friend Victoria and I, who know what a fluffer is, proceeded to fall out of our chairs. And my parents, who were oblivious, didn't really know, but they forced us to tell them. So we told them that a fluffer is somebody who keeps the men prepared during pornographic filmings. And my brother elaborated that he was not a human fluffer. He was a potato fluffer at McAllister's Deli. So, we have myself, the daycare worker, my brother, the fluffer, and then my dad was so kind of embarrassed because he had to admit to his children that he had to take on an extra job, and he had been our hero. And he knew that he was our hero, and he knew that he'd done well, but it hurt him to have to tell us that he had to take an extra job. So he said, "Well, kids, I found an extra job today, and I'm driving a dead van." Okay. my first thought was a Grateful Dead van, and I thought, Dad, you are okay. He's dead, so I don't know where you're gonna go. So then he elaborated that one of his buddies has a company that contracts with morgues and hospitals and funeral homes to actually go pick up the fresh dead bodies, transport them to the morgues, and then transport them to the funeral homes, and they needed a driver. So my dad said, I'll be driving that van. And from then on, we had a minivan parked in our driveway that was known as the Dead Van. Well, it was funny to watch my father. He began to really care about the stories of these people in the Dead Van, and he asked every detail about them, and he came home and told us these amazing stories. And it was funny to see the weight of the church and the hedges and the byways and the sick and afflicted fall off of him when he began to tell us these stories of people that had already passed. And my favorite story is a story, I'll call him Miguel. Miguel was a person who was from Mexico, and he didn't have any family. And so he was found dead on the road. He was probably an alcoholic. And so they took him to a local funeral home who agreed to give him a service, and my dad did the service. However, my dad also cooks pot roasts a lot, and in between taking Miguel to from the morgue to the funeral home, he had to stop back home to make sure the pot roast was okay. So my friend, Victoria, was terrified of the dead van, and we assured her that there was never any real bodies in the van, ever, 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 ever. So my brother had gone to pick up Victoria to come over for family dinner, and Victoria, being a transgendered woman, is obsessed with her hair and her makeup. And she will look in any reflective surface that is available to her ever, anywhere. And you actually have to stop her from preening and fixing her lip gloss. So I was inside helping Dad with the dinner. I said, "Aren't you doing a transport?" He said, "Oh, yeah, Miguel's in the car. It's fine." And I thought, oh, this is going to be bad. I hear my brother pull up. I hear the door shut. And then not 10 seconds later, I hear decibels that only dogs could hear, the most blood-curdling scream I've ever heard in my life. My brother ran in and said, "Victoria's on the ground. I think she's dead." I said, no, she's just over-dramatized. And people from the neighborhood, the nice suburban neighborhood, were coming out of their houses to see what was the matter. And we picked Victoria up off the ground, and my dad was just, "Yeah, we're fine, looking around. And my mother was furious because she has also hated the dead van, and she came out and said, "Dan, I told you not to bring those dead folks back to our house." So messed up. And our entire neighborhood was hearing this. And so we bring Victoria into our dinner table, calm her down. I told her, "Drink your juice, Shelby. You'll be fine." And from that night on, my father promised only to bring the stories of the dead van home, not to actually bring the bodies. Thank you.